Hey guys, Christy Dosh here from Guide My Brand. I am one of the founding contributors of the Social Circle, and I am so happy to be here. I just cannot believe the quality of the people that are in this group, both as contributors and as members. I've really been blown away by what Brooke and Jason have been able to put together here so far, and I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. So today I posted in the group about how to get on television because I'm a publicist and I spend a lot of my time pitching my clients for television. I have done a lot of television myself over the years, local, regional, national, you name it. So I wanted to share with you how I first got on TV. I pitched myself for it the very first time. So I will start out by saying you do not have to hire a publicist. Certainly always happy to talk to new prospective clients, but totally something that you can do yourself. I never try to tell people that you have to have a publicist to land yourself on, big blogs like Forbes and Fast Company or radio shows or TV programs, podcasts, what have you. I always tell people I'm my own best case study because I was my own publicist first and I use myself as a guinea pig. So when I work with clients, a lot of what I do is based on years of using myself as a guinea pig and trial and error based on myself and my own businesses. So if you're here, say hi. I would love to know you're here. I know some of you posted questions earlier in the group today, which is what prompted this Facebook Live. And I appreciate that Jason and Brooke said that I could go live in the group real quick because I realized it was going to be easier to answer your questions and sort of cover everything I know about how to get yourself on TV, doing it video rather than trying to type like paragraph upon paragraph upon paragraph about how to do it. So I see some of you joining. Hi, Tanya. If you're here, feel free to say hi. So I thought the easiest way to start this would be to tell you how I got myself on TV first. Again, did it myself, no publicist, zero experience being on television, like never even interviewed by like a campus TV station. I mean, I had literally never been on television before. Hi, Becky. So the first time I was on television, I had been watching a show on a regional sports network. I'm a huge sports fan. At the time, I was a practicing attorney. I did not practice in the area of sports, but in my free time, I blogged about legal issues in sports because I am sort of a geek about legal and business issues and definitely a huge sports fan. And so I'd been watching this show on a regional network. I knew the show taped in Atlanta where I lived at the time. And I noticed they had a legal analyst. And I thought to myself, how cool would that be to get to be a legal analyst on TV? And it was this older gentleman. And I noticed after a while that he quit coming on the show. And I didn't know if it was because he had retired or they just hadn't had anything interesting to talk about lately. I wasn't really sure what had happened. And I'm not really sure looking back where I got the balls to do this because I would have been like 27 maybe at the time. It was actually my birthday yesterday and I turned 35. So that was a while back, but young, naive, ballsy, whatever. I decided to email the producer for that television show, whose email address I was able to find on their website, and just ask her why the legal analyst wasn't on there anymore and to offer up myself as a legal analyst if they ever needed one. I was able to credential myself by saying that I was an attorney, and so obviously that made me qualified to talk about legal issues. And also at that time, I had a book deal from a publisher. It wasn't self-published, but it was a smaller academic publisher, and it was a sports-related book. And so I was able to sort of reference that book deal in order to further credential myself. And I didn't pitch a specific segment, which I'm going to tell you how to pitch yourself. Now, if I'm pitching for myself or for clients, it's a specific segment. But at the time, I was just reaching out, trying to get in touch with this producer and tell her who I was. And so I really was just kind of giving my background and credentialing myself. And I essentially said, I noticed so-and-so, your legal analyst doesn't come on anymore. If you ever need someone, I would be interested. And that was all I said. And she emailed me back within, I think a day or two, and asked me, did I want to come into the studio and have a meeting with her? And I think by that point, I was like, it was so easy to hide behind your computer screen. And for me, it was easy to send that email. I've I've never been afraid to send an email. I know that everyone doesn't feel that way and that sending that email can be really scary. But like I said, I was 27, I was kind of ballsy. And so I went in and met with the producer, and she told me they wanted to test me live on the air that night. So I got thrown on live television that night for a segment with 3 pretty intimidating male sportscasters in town who served as co-hosts on this show. So I went on live with these 3 men who were much older and more accomplished than I was. A little intimidating anyway to be the only female in the room. Live TV, no prep, had no real idea of what we were going to talk about. Oh, and they forgot to tell me which camera to look at. So I was pretty much looking in the wrong place for the entire segment. I still have the segment, I think, to this day. I haven't watched it in a couple of years, but it's pretty embarrassing. But apparently I did well enough. They did ask me to come back again, and I ultimately got offered a once-a-week segment on that show, and I came in every week and did a segment. I did that for nearly 2 years. At the same time, I got a position contributing for Forbes and was writing there, in addition to practicing law full-time. And after doing all those things for about 2 years, I ended up getting hired away by ESPN to be their sports business reporter, which I did for a couple of years, and sort of, long story short, led me down to the path where I eventually became a publicist and help other people land those kind of opportunities now. So, sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable here. I've been sitting too long today, and I'm like, my back is killing me. When I get done, I'm working out. I'm saying it here live. You guys can hold me accountable. I'm going to make myself work out today. Okay. So when I posted earlier about getting people on television, everyone wanted to know, how do I get on TV? So the most important thing you can do is to watch TV. Yes, I'm giving you permission to spend time in front of the boob tube. It is really important that you watch the show you want to pitch before you pitch the show. If you can't watch it when it's on, live, record it on your DVR. Most of the shows now put their guest segments on their website so you can go and look through clips. So when I'm pitching a client who lives in a market outside of mine, which all of my clients except one are outside of my market, I go to the TV station websites and look through clips. And the first thing I'm looking for is, do they have guests on who are somewhat similar to my client? So one of my clients is a vegan cookbook author. Carrie says she doesn't have cable. You can get on their website and watch the clips, okay? It's no big deal if you can't watch the show on TV. I haven't really found a station yet that doesn't put at least some of their clips online. They don't always put them all on there, but most of them put at least some of their guest segments on there, if not all of them. So you can usually find the intel you need that way. So for my vegan cookbook author, I'm looking for, do they have segments where people actually cook and do live demonstrations? Do they have segments where people are talking about the vegan lifestyle or talking about eating more healthy, like more of a sit-down segment versus a cooking segment? So I'm looking to see, not has there been someone exactly like her on before, although I will make note of that if I find a guest I think looks exactly like me or my client when I'm doing this research. I'm just looking to see, do we fit into the show? Do they cover topics like ours? You can generally tell what their demographic is by looking through those clips. Most of the time you're going to be looking at morning television shows. As far as local TV goes, that's when they're going to have the bulk of their segments with outside experts. Now, it sort of depends on what your area of expertise is. My area of expertise is the business of sports. So actually, I'm on night TV more. I'm on the evening news as an expert who's being interviewed on, say, the economic impact of a game that's coming to town, that kind of thing. But for most of the entrepreneurs I work with, and most of you who I know are in this group, your product or service probably fits better on morning TV. It's going to be more hard news at night. Okay, so more lifestyle kind of features in the morning, hard news at night. Weekends can be a mix of both. So check out your local stations and don't just look at your ABC, NBC, Fox, like the big networks. Look at the CW as well if you're here in the States. Oftentimes the CW has some really interesting local shows, varies greatly by market. But I know like in one market I looked at, they have a show that's all about real estate. So if I had a client who was a realtor, or who I at one point had a client who taught how to flip houses, that's the kind of show I would want to pitch them on. Tanya says she's thinking the Real morning shows. I've actually been speaking to the Real, trying to get a client on there, and had a couple of people I've talked to who have been on that show before. That show actually does a lot of their own research, and they're out on social media, particularly YouTube, looking for people for the show, but you can certainly pitch them directly as well, which is what I'm working through. But those sort of morning show audiences tend to be stay-at-home moms and retirees. And so your topic needs to be of interest to them. It's much tougher for me to pitch. For example, I've had a client for a while now who's a sales trainer who largely goes into like Fortune 500 companies and teaches sales techniques. She's not a good fit for morning television because those people are at work. They're not at home watching Good Day Atlanta or whatever your local show is. So it's important to watch the shows you want to be on and understand whether or not your topic fits in with the types of things that they talk about. So first and foremost, watch your show. I mean, that's how I got on. I was watching that show and I noticed someone who was like me, actually almost exactly like me. He was an attorney, just much older than I was. And I noticed when he left, and I essentially wanted to replace him. I wanted to be more of a regular guest. A lot of you are going to be pitching for kind of one-off things. I mean, certainly you'd be happy to go back multiple times, but you're not necessarily looking for like a co-hosting role like I sort of was at the time. So you want to watch the shows and see if your content fits in. Okay, if you see that your content fits in, then the next step would be to find out who books guests for that show. Occasionally you can find that information online. It's become harder to find than it used to be. But a lot of times if you go to like their contact us page, they'll list the producers for each show. That's one route you can take. I found that most of the time you can just call the station and say who books guests for your XYZ show, and they'll tell you who books guests. I try not to let them put me through to the person's voicemail. I just ask, can I have an email address? And I even say I'm a publicist and I want to pitch them an idea. Most producers, and sometimes their title is talent booker, most producers and talent bookers want to be pitched by email. They do not want to be pitched by phone. I do sometimes follow up by phone. If I've gone, say, a week and I haven't heard back from them, I might follow up with an email. I might follow up with a phone call. It sort of depends on whether I've ever dealt with them before or not, and just what my gut feeling is and how quickly I'm trying to get my client on the show. But I don't pitch by phone first. I don't like to be pitched by phone, and so I don't generally pitch people by phone. So call, ask whoever answers the switchboard who books shows for, who books guests for the XYZ show, and can I have their email address? And 9 times out of 10, they will give it to you. It's usually not a huge deal. You can usually get that information. So then from there is actually pitching them and writing the email to pitch to be on the show. Now, you've got to figure out what your topic is beforehand. I told you when I pitched myself, I did more of this like just open, get to know me. This is who I am. I'd love to be on your show sometime. But, that was before I knew what I was doing and I didn't know anybody to ask about what to do. So you want to go to them with a segment idea. And having watched the show, having watched those clips online like I talked about, you should have somewhat of an idea of the type of segment. Like my cookbook author, she would much rather go in and do a live cooking demonstration than sit down and talk to them about healthy eating, because she's trying to sell cookbooks. So she wants to see people to see her cooking her recipes. So we knew that that was the type of segment we were going to pitch. And then we did it based on the time of year that it was and pitched recipes that were relevant to that particular season. So if we were doing it right now, we'd be pitching holiday recipes, that sort of thing. It's great if you can make it timely. A really good way to do that is watch for what journalists and us on this side call the news hook. Look for things in the news you can pitch around, which means you've got to be able to pitch fast, okay? Because these things don't trend for that long. So let's say, for example, Chrissy Teigen is in the news because she got shamed on Twitter for her post-baby body, and she was slamming those people back. Okay, that was something that did trend not too long ago. So I have a client who runs a business where part of their mission is to help women feel better about themselves and to sort of teach women that there's no one diet or exercise program that's right for everybody, that you've got to find what works for you, and just a lot of positivity around your body image and that sort of thing. So I would use something like that Chrissy Teigen story to tee up my pitch. I would email and say, you may have seen recently that Chrissy Teigen was shamed on Twitter, for her post-baby body, and that she slammed the person back saying XYZ. I have a client who, and then I would go into sort of credentialing my client as an expert who can speak to that trend of women being shamed for not getting their bodies back, weeks after they've had the baby. So anytime you have a news hook like that you can pitch around, you will be far more successful. You don't have to have the news hook, but I'm telling you that as the best way and the easiest way to get your foot in the door is by having that news hook. Hi, Jason. So the news hook is a great way to do it. The other way I tend to pitch if I don't have a news hook, because, the timing just isn't always right for that, is I start my pitch with a shocking or surprising question or fact. I try to make it a question. So for example, I have a client who's a doctor and she has a skincare line, and it's 100% plant and mineral based, while giving you medical grade results, because she's a doctor and she runs a medical spa. Jason said, saw you on TV set today. So I love TV and I love pitching clients for TV. And, so I try to tee up the pitch with some sort of shocking question. So for my doctor client, she had written this blog about this one ingredient that's in a lot of skincare products. And that ingredient happens to be the same ingredient that's used by manufacturers to soften rubber. So you're using the same chemical on your face to soften your skin that they use to soften rubber. I don't know about you, but that really doesn't sound great to me. I don't really want that kind of chemical on my skin. So I pitched it that way. The question was something about, did you know you may be putting a chemical that's used to soften rubber on your face every day? That was my shocking question. And then I went into the facts behind it, and I gave the name, which, the name was this long and I can't pronounce it. I gave the name of the chemical, and what it's often used in. And then I gave the background of my client, how she had thyroid cancer that led her to look at ingredients on her products. She saw ingredients like that, freaked her out, wanted to create her own skincare line that was plant-based, but still gave you medical grade results. Couldn't find a product out there like that gave medical grade results when it was all natural. And so she created her own product line, so that's essentially, Jason, yikes, soften rubber. And Jason always points out that I know The Rock. I do. And yesterday was my birthday, and I almost tweeted at The Rock and asked him to tell me happy birthday. Just probably so out of line that I didn't actually do it. But I was thinking yesterday, who I really want to tell me happy birthday? I want The Rock to tell me happy birthday, but I felt like I shouldn't ask for it on behalf of myself. So, Jason, you put your birthday in the comments, and I'm going to write it down, and I will try to get him to say happy birthday to you on your birthday, because I know how much you would appreciate that. Tanya says she loves him. Yeah, who doesn't love The Rock? And Brooke's like, hey, we're talking about The Rock again. Yes, it is impossible for me to do a live that involves Brooke or Jason Rash where The Rock does not come up. But, I saw Brooke post the other day that, it's the perception of you is all about the people you surround yourself with and the type of people you hang out with. So if the person they associate me with is The Rock, then I'm thinking I'm pretty freaking cool, right? Okay. So, oh, and Brooke says that Jason's 40th is coming up. I will so try to get The Rock to say happy birthday. June 30th. I'm totally writing it down when we get off of this live. I'm putting a reminder on my calendar. And by June, maybe you will have forgotten about it, and then it'll be a big surprise. Okay. So, pitching TV, back on the subject. If you don't have that news hook that you can use to pitch your topic, then shocking, surprising, question or fact is the way to go. And that's actually what you want to lead with, is that shocking or surprising question or fact. Don't lead with your bio. Even if you've got a really strong background and you've done some really amazing things, don't lead with your bio, okay? You want to lead with what you can come on and talk about, and you want to focus on what you can teach the audience. I actually saw another publicist who will go unnamed. Oh, Brooke wants me to get The Rock to show up at the door. Okay, I've never actually met The Rock in person. We have a strictly Twitter and email relationship. So as soon as I get to meet The Rock in person, I'll make sure you get to meet The Rock in person. Okay, I gotta keep my train of thought. I'm very distracted by The Rock and thinking about The Rock. So pitching yourself for this segment, you want to focus on what you're going to teach the audience. Oh, I was saying, I saw another publicist the other day who did a video on pitching yourself for TV. And I'm not going to mention the person because I'm sure that the person does a wonderful job. But one of the things I sort of caught, and I'm not sure that they really meant it, and maybe if you talk to them longer, they would explain it differently. But they talked about having this goal to go on and talk about your business and get leads and send traffic to your website and whatever. And I don't want you to approach it from that angle. Absolutely, being on TV can do some awesome things for you. It credentials you first and foremost. That is the number one reason you go on TV, is to credential yourself as an expert so that you can then share having gone on TV on your website and on social media, so that the people who are thinking about working with you start to see you as an expert. First and foremost, number one reason you go on TV, credibility. Driving traffic to your website, TV is actually not fantastic for that, particularly for service-based entrepreneurs. Product-based is a little bit different. When my client who has a skincare line goes on TV, she does get traffic on her website and make sales. We're not talking enormous numbers, but we can tell like the day her television segment airs. Service-based entrepreneurs, we generally don't see as much traffic, and certainly not direct sales from TV. As a matter of fact, I can't think of any of my clients who've ever come back to me and said, hey, this person hired me because they saw me on TV the other day. Now, they've had people who were sort of like watching them already on social media who saw that they were on TV, and I think that gave them that like added expert status, and maybe that swayed their decision to want to work with them. But like a stranger who's never heard of you, who sees you on morning TV, especially in a local market, isn't necessarily going to come to your website and hire you later that afternoon. So it's important. I always try to set expectations with my client, and it's different for all of you depending on what your product or service is. But generally speaking, as far as sales, TV is better for product-based. But if you're service-based, you should still go on because of the credibility and because it positions you as an expert. And so as you go into your pitch, it is not about convincing them that you are the world's foremost expert on your topic. And it's not so much about selling yourself and selling your business. You have to include that because they only want to have experts on TV. But first and foremost, it's what are you going to come on and talk about, and what are people going to walk away with? And it's about teaching them something. So for example, I was watching Dr. Oz this morning because I have a client who really wants to be on Dr. Oz. Actually, the same client I was talking about, the doctor who has a skincare line. She's done a lot of local TV. She's ready for national now. And her two dreams are to be on The Doctors and Dr. Oz. And so every morning, I watch The Doctors and Dr. Oz, which are shows that I wouldn't normally watch, that I don't find all that interesting, to be perfectly honest. But I watch them every morning. I've got, and you guys can't see it, but sort of off to this side of me is a TV on the wall in my office. So I have this beautiful like gallery wall, and I had to destroy part of it to put a TV up because I need to be able to watch these shows. Because I told you, the first thing you've got to do before you pitch yourself for TV is you have got to watch the shows, okay? And somebody said they didn't have cable. You can watch guest segments on their websites. I watch it live on TV because I can. But for clients I have in other markets, like I have a client I'm trying to pitch in Des Moines, Iowa right now. I don't know the first thing about TV in Des Moines, Iowa. I know how TV works in general, so I can pitch somebody for TV anywhere in the U.S. It gets a little different actually when you get into other countries. So outside the U.S. and Canada, I don't work with clients on TV, but I need to know what kind of segments they have and get a feel for the types of guests they like to have. So first and foremost, you have got to watch the show. They will know if you pitch pitch and you have never really watched the show, they will know. And so I've been watching The Doctors and Dr. Oz. So to sort of get back to my point about teaching people things, there was a guy who came on this morning and he was wanting, I'm sure, to promote, I'm sure his goal in his mind was to promote his foundation, which is a 501c3 that conducts research on brain aneurysms. And he had a great story, great from a publicity perspective, a great story about his wife who ended up with a ruptured brain aneurysm, and unfortunately she passed away. And that's why I say it's a great story in terms of like from a publicity standpoint. He has a good backstory that makes him easy to pitch, but certainly a terrible story for him. But I'm sure he was on there to raise awareness of his foundation and to maybe even raise money for his foundation, but he didn't go on and talk that much about his foundation. They mentioned the name of it, but he wasn't coming from a place of like pushing his foundation at you. And you need to think the same way about your business. You're not on there to shove your business down people's throats. They might mention the name of your business like once or twice. They'll probably put it on the bottom third of the screen, and that's kind of where it's going to end, because what you need to go on what you need to do is go on and teach people something, okay? And you've got to make it clear in that pitch email that you send where you're pitching yourself to get on TV that you are going to teach people something, because it's not an infomercial. If you pitch something that seems like you're going to push yourself and your business or your product too much, they will send you the ad rate card for you to purchase a commercial, okay? I've heard about producers doing that. I've never had one do it to me, knock on wood, but I've heard that producers will do that. So it cannot sound like you're coming on to be self-promotional in your pitch. And it's best to work with somebody who can train you before you actually go on and do the segment to make sure that you don't come across that way in your segment either. I actually had a client who came to me from another publicist who had gotten her on television, and I pitched the same producer to have her back on TV, and the producer said that they weren't interested in having her back on because they didn't like the way she presented when she came on the first time, and that was because she had absolutely zero training from the person who put her on TV. And you know, again, I'm not going to name names and I don't want to rag on people, but you cannot, me as a publicist, I cannot send a client on TV without prepping them for the kind of questions they're going to get and walking them through it. If you manage to land a segment, particularly if you landed after you listen to this, one, I want to know about it because I'll be so excited for you. But two, I will, because I'm part of this social circle, I will get on the phone with you and prep you to be on TV, okay? Because you'll never be on TV again if you go on with no idea of what you're doing. So as much as I want to give you the tools here to pitch yourself, and you don't have to hire me, I don't have to be your publicist, you don't have to have a publicist, but please be prepared when you go on so that you can be on again, okay? So remember, reach out to me if you actually land a segment, and let's get you ready for it. But when you're putting together that pitch email, you've got to tell them what they're going to learn. And so back to the segment I saw in Dr. Oz this morning. Okay, the guy's clearly on there to spread awareness of his foundation, this 501c3 nonprofit that he has. But they didn't really talk about it that much. What they talked about were teaching people the warning signs of a ruptured aneurysm. So he talked about his wife had a headache for a couple of days, that she described it as one of the worst pains she'd ever had. You know, up on a board there in the studio, they had a list of like 5 things to watch out for that are signs that you might be having a brain aneurysm. That's what you need in your pitch. Tell them what you are going to teach people. So when my client was on for that segment I talked about earlier about the chemical that's in your that's in some of your skincare products that softens rubber, that segment we ended up doing, and I hope I don't get this wrong, we've done a lot with her. That one I think we ended up doing products in your bathroom. 5, I think it was 5 products. Like coming up with it, I'm remembering as I say it, it was like 5 products in your bathroom you should get rid of. And we went through, she went through champagne and champagne. I am ready for champagne. I need champagne after this day and this week. shampoo. We talked about what shampoo to throw away. And so we were teaching people something. Now, obviously the ultimate goal is that people want to learn more about her skincare line and they want to purchase her skincare line, but we didn't even have her product mentioned in the segment. I'm trying to remember it. I think it might've been sitting on a table full of products that we had, but we had other people's products too. My client doesn't make a shampoo, and so she was recommending a shampoo that she does use, which is not from her own line. So when I pitched the segment, and actually, you know what, I will go back and I will find where I pitched the segment, and I will post for you guys who are paying attention and are on this live. And I see some of you are asking questions, and I will get to them, I swear. But I will post for you the email I sent that landed that segment, so you can see what it looked like and how I laid it out to show what we would teach people. And so you may be going on there with the goal to get more business for yourself. I mean, that's probably your goal, sell a book or to get more business. But that's not what you pitch. You pitch what you're going to teach the audience, and then you credential yourself. So my pitches usually start out, like, I'm just going to recap with a shocking or surprising question or fact. I like better when it's a question, just because for me, the flow is a little better. So shocking or surprising question or fact. Then I go into fleshing out my topic, the answer to that question, and sort of laying out what my topic would be for my segment or for my client segment. And then I credential myself or the client as the right person to go on and talk about it. And you do not have to be the world's foremost expert to be the one who goes on and talks about it. I read an awesome article this morning that I shared in a couple of places. I don't think I shared it in this group, but I shared it in, I think, maybe on my personal page and in my own group, but it said that a study showed that only 19% of the experts who are on TV are women. And I know Jason's in here, but for the women that are in here, 19% of the experts on TV are women. That is it. And it said the major reason for that is that women don't pitch themselves, that women don't think they're ready, that women never think that they're expert enough. And my sort of mantra is, everyone is an expert on their own experience, okay? So think about how you can pull in details from your past, from your career, from your life experiences that position you as an expert, okay? So my client, even though she's a doctor, and at some level being a doctor makes her credible for what she wanted to go on and talk about, I think the piece that seals it for her and gets her so many media opportunities is that the way we pitch it is, yes, she's a doctor. She's a doctor who had thyroid cancer in her mid-30s. Having thyroid cancer caused her to be more conscientious about what she was putting on her skin, which eventually led her to create her skincare line. And I worded all more eloquently than that in my pitches, but that's why she's an expert. She's not a dermatologist. She's an ear, nose, and throat doctor. So I can't position her in certain ways because she's not a dermatologist and her background isn't necessarily all in skin, although because she's an ENT, she deals with, the head and neck and the face. And she tells me all the time that she's even better than a dermatologist. But I don't say that when I'm pitching her. What I say is her experience is that she had thyroid cancer and that caused her to look into what she was using on her products. That's the kind of stuff they love. Anytime you've got something in your background, my client who's the vegan cookbook author, she got comfortable sharing that she was a sugar addict, so much so that she worked in a bakery, and that when they would throw out defective desserts, she would dig them out of the trash and eat them. That's how much of a sugar addict she was. Because of that, she began to lead this, lifestyle where she chose vegan foods, and she was trying to cut out dairy and sugar, and it led her to this vegan cookbook that she created. Those are the details you want to include when I talk about credentialing yourself in your pitch. And I know this is getting long, guys, but I'm having so much fun, and I get super passionate about this stuff. But don't worry about positioning yourself as the biggest expert in the space. You don't have to prove to them that you are, out of everyone in the entire country, the only person they should have on, talking about this because you've got 7 degrees and you've already been on these 5 shows and written for these 7 outlets and whatever. I mean, certainly it becomes easier to pitch yourself for things once you have all of that. But the way you want to position yourself is an expert expert on your own experience, okay? You're all experts. So it is now my mission, since I read that quote this morning, although I work with women and men, it is now my mission to change that stat. I was so angry when I read that only 19% of experts on TV are women. So I'm leading the charge. And Jason, I'll get you on TV too if you want to be on TV, but I'm all about getting the women on TV. Okay. So I'm going to try to scroll back through some, because I know I saw questions come in. Let me just make sure I went back far enough on this. Oh, Jason says he loves that I'm being honest about this. Yeah, I love sharing this kind of stuff. I am never going to tell you guys that you have to hire a publicist or that you have to hire me. You can be your own publicist. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a Be Your Own Publicist course because I want to be able to serve people who can't necessarily afford to work with me one-on-one, or when I'm full can't work with me one-on-one. But this is the kind of stuff that is going to go in my To Be Created TV module. Is the exact stuff I'm running through with you guys here. So actually it's helpful for me to kind of run it through and see what your questions are. Jason says, what's the craziest scenario in TV that you've had happen? I haven't had anything crazy or bad happen with me or any of my clients. The worst thing that ever happened to me was the first time I went on and I wasn't looking at the right camera. Luckily they forgave me, showed me where the camera was, and had me on again. So that's also one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me in my life. But, and then, in terms of not crazy, but just bad, was this client who came to work with me who had been with someone else who didn't prepare her and just threw her on TV. And then she didn't do great on TV. And then the producer didn't ever want to have her back again. And the producer made me promise that if we booked another segment, I would do media training with her. And that's fair, because I try to do training with all of my clients. I had a client who the same client, had a newspaper interview recently. And I got on the phone with her first and I talked about how to present her story and the kind of questions I thought they might ask her. And I tried to role play with her because I wanted this interview to be great. And I want the feature on her in the newspaper to be fantastic. Let's see. Tanya says, I was going to ask about prepping for a TV spot. Do you think it's best to work with PR? Yes, you answered my question. The advantage to working with a publicist or a public relations firm is that they already have a lot of the connections. Now, they might not have connections in your local market unless you're working with someone local. But for national and that sort of thing, they'll have the connections. But even for your local market, they'll sort of understand who to pitch, how to shape a segment. I mean, I do think that my success rate as a publicist is probably higher than most people would have on their own, but don't let that stop you. If you can't afford $2,000 a month to work with me, some people are as much as $4,500 a month. If you're not at that stage yet in your business where you're essentially wanting to, outsource that piece of your business, it's absolutely something that you can do on your own. There's nothing that says that you can't send the email pitch to the producer yourself. It's how I got on TV the first time, was sending an email to the producer myself, and they have no problem with it. I've talked to producers and talent bookers about this. They would love to hear from you. It doesn't have to be through a publicist or a PR person. So absolutely, you can do it yourself. Tanya also asked, would I be open to reviewing the email before it gets sent? Would you be open to review the email before it gets sent once you do the research for a show and get the contact? If you want me, if you're asking, would I review your email before you send it? Absolutely. Send it over to me by direct message. Maybe ping me in the group so I know to look in my other folder in case it goes in there. Happy to give your email a look, and I will post an example in this thread when I get done. And you can use my example to craft your own. Tanya says, thanks. She's taking notes. Oh, you're welcome. Jason says he can't wait to interview me. Oh, I can't wait either. I have so much fun. I love this group already. Constance said, we never think we're ready. That was when I was talking about women being less likely to pitch themselves for television. I'm telling you right here in this group, the women in this group, I feel it in my bones, are going to be the women who start to change that stat. Vanessa says, hi. Jason says he knows people that are trying to get publicity and have no idea where to start. And honestly, people end up getting paralyzed, and so they just don't do it at all. And they see other people in their field who are getting these opportunities, and they're thinking to themselves, like, why am I not getting to do that kind of stuff? It's because that other person is pitching themselves. You have to be willing to be self-promotional. People sometimes think that's like an icky term. I'm one of the most self-promotional people I know. It has served me quite well, actually. I think that if you have the stuff to back it up, you should be self-promotional. Share your gifts with the world. Don't hide them. Vanessa says, I need publicity for a nonprofit event. How can I work that, especially if I have a prominent keynote speaker? And you may have asked this, Vanessa, before I went into talking about the segment I saw on Dr. Oz this morning, but I think that's a great example. I think that they were probably trying to promote that foundation, and it wouldn't be unusual to even have seen them talk about an event that the foundation had coming up. I mean, I've seen that on TV before. So you certainly could get a mention of it, but the way you want to pitch the segment usually is that you're going to come on and teach people something. So whatever that nonprofit, stands for, whatever their mission is, whatever they're trying to cure or do in the community, you want to go on and teach people about that topic, and sort of mentioning the event is almost a side note. Some local networks are better than others about highlighting local events and might let you come on and talk a little in broader terms and talk longer about the event itself. Totally varies by show as to how much they'll let you talk about the event itself. But I certainly think you can get on if you focus on teaching people something about the topic. So hopefully that makes sense. Just that we'll get the women on TV first. Yes. Okay, so that's all the questions I see. If there's any more, pop them in. I know I want to get done in plenty of time because you've got one of your experts coming here in the group at 4 for a planned training, and this was a little more impromptu, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I'm glad I was able to come on and talk about it. This was a lot easier than trying to type all of this in the thread we started earlier today, and I love coming on and being on with you guys live, even if it means I have to put on makeup and do my hair. It's totally worth it to get to spend a little time with you. If you watch this on replay and you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I will come back and answer every single question. No question left behind. And as soon as I get done, I'm going to hop over here on my computer and look for my pitch letter. I'll try and find the one I talked about for this segment for my doctor client so that you can see what the actual pitch letter for that segment looked like. I may have to find a better one because she goes on that station fairly often, so I wouldn't have fleshed out her bio or credentialed her maybe as much, but I'll find a really good example. I know I've got an example I use in one of my paid products, and I can pull that one for you guys, and I'm going to put it in the comments here so that just those of you who hung in till the end or went through the comments will get the benefit of seeing the pitch. Okay, it was so fun to jump in here with you guys. You had awesome questions, and if you have any more, pop them in the comments, and hopefully I will see you again soon.